Hey everyone, in case you couldn't tell, I've been a bit under the weather recently. I was going to review the new feature-length 9 Inch Nails music video, but since I can't really drink on my medication, I decided to pivot to something a bit more festive. Horror movies. We love them, but you know what a lot of people hate? Jump scares. Those loud, obnoxious, out-of-nowhere scares that are often used when a film doesn't actually know how to be scary. You've probably seen quite a few that fit in this criteria. A scary face pops up with the sound of a nuclear warhead erupting playing in the background. But while the term jump scare is often viewed as a negative, there are some good jump scares out there. Ones that are well crafted, well executed, and manage to make you jump and scream without wanting to drive to the director's house with a shotgun. So today I want to share some of my favorite jump scares throughout horror movies, in no particular order, which also means spoiler alert for all movies I'm going to be talking about. Leave a like if that sounds good, and be sure to let me know what jump scare always gets you in the comments below. John Carpenter's The Thing is my favorite horror movie, period. To me, there is very little that comes close to its setup, its characters, and especially its execution. The titular Thing is a technical marvel that still holds up today, able to change its shape and form to almost anything and anyone. It's the source of a lot of great scares, with a lot of people touting the chest mouth scene as the film's peak jump scare.
Clear!
But there's one I like just a little bit better. Kurt Russell's MacReady believes one of his fellow crewmates to be the Thing and gets the idea to test everyone's blood with a hot needle. This is because the entity is a whole being, with every fiber of it being a carefully constructed piece that will react when it's harmed. They test the theory on a drop of Windows blood and find it to have no effect. MacReady tries it on his own and gets the same result. Same goes for the dead bodies, which includes Clark, who MacReady killed in self-defense. Doesn't seem like MacReady's plan is holding a lot of weight, which is something a tied-up Gary brings up.
This is pure nonsense. Doesn't prove a thing.
I thought you'd feel that way, Gary. We'll do you last.
While it's not as gross or as over-the-top as the chest mouth scene, this is still one that always gets me. The buildup is magnificent, blowing past the rule of threes to make this an incredibly surprising shock, even throwing in a red herring with Gary to make you think it could be him. Throw in that high-pitched screech and follow it with a very gross monster transformation, and you've got a scene that encapsulates everything I love about this movie. A lot of people have fears centering around the creepy crawlies of the world. If that's you, then maybe skip this section. And David Cronenberg's The Fly as a whole. It is a disgusting work of body horror that runs parallel to a frightening descent into madness thanks to a harrowing and quirky performance from one Jeff Goldblum. But while his body decays and falls apart, he's not the only one being stricken with horror. Ronnie, Dr. Seth Brundle's girlfriend, discovers she's pregnant with the Fly Man's baby. And once she realizes that, she proceeds to have a nightmare that, look, maybe this isn't technically a jump scare, but the shockingness of the imagery is no less scary. Christ, dude, just the thought of having that wriggling, writhing, several feet long monstrosity inside of you, I can't even describe how unsettling that makes me feel. Sometimes the miracle of childbirth is more of a curse, and I think this scene perfectly illustrates that in revolting fashion. Ladies, please don't throw your life away on that douchebag fly you met at the bar. It's just not worth it. The Conjuring kind of treads this line for me on what I consider to be jump scare overkill. Sometimes I think the sound engineer cranked the dial a bit too high on some of those jump scares, but the rest of the film is so well crafted and directed that I kind of have to forgive it. And there's plenty of good jump scares to choose from the relatively quiet hanging vision to the now iconic clapping game. But there is one scene in particular that stands out in my mind as the only scare that truly got me. It takes place one night when Andrea is awoken by her sister Cindy, continuously bumping her head on a wardrobe. Just another night in the parent house apparently, because Andrea quietly motions for her to go to bed. But when Andrea hears something go bump in there, she decides to slowly open it. And there's nothing there. False alarm. Oh hey, what's that up there? The build-up, the fake-outs, and the grotesque payoff is all pretty stellar here, managing to make me figuratively shit my pants my first time I watched this. Figuratively. Just want to make sure that's clear. The Conjuring franchise never really had a scare as good as this one as it went on, but at least that scary witch will always have a place in my heart. Yeah, grief is the monster, blah blah blah, we've heard it before. But seriously, The Babadook is the film that actually reinvigorated my interest in the horror genre way back in my freshman year of college. I hadn't seen many films like it before, and while it's certainly a movie that revels in its themes and style a lot more than its traditional scares, there's still a few in there that I particularly like. Honorable mention has to go to Amelia seeing the titular monster in her neighbor's house. But I think the moment when Amelia and the Babadook come face to face for the first time is truly a standout. The arrival of this top-hatted juggalo is preceded by a slow build-up that takes you back to the days of hiding under the covers as a kid. The hard-to-make-out figure in the dark, the suspicious noises that you can't quite comprehend, and then there's the voice. God, watching that scene alone in my dorm room freaked me the hell out, and it still does today. And if that's not enough, Mr. Babadook decides to say hello face to face, scuttling across the ceiling like a stop-motion insect before diving straight into your very soul. It's probably not the most jump-out-of-your-seat scare the film has, but it's definitely the one with the most satisfying build-up and payoff. For a film that maybe puts most of its effort into metaphors and symbolism, it still knows how to deliver those classic horror moments. One of the few horror movies that I think should be mandatory viewing in sex ed class, it follows centers around an entity that can be passed from one person to another by getting down and dirty with them. The entity can appear as anybody, and only you can see it. And if it manages to eventually get its hands on you, it kills you, and goes right after the person who had it last. Because it can appear as anybody, even someone you know, you can't ever let your guard down. But sometimes the ghost decides to be a little cheeky and decides to look like the scariest guy I can think of. The best example of this happens when Micah Monroe's Jay is being pursued by the being in her house, though her friends are unable to see it. She takes cover in her room, slowly allowing her friends to drizzle in, but when the last straggler decides to come to the door, she unknowingly brings a friend. The ghost rolls up looking like a 7-foot-tall Tony Hawk, and his relatively quiet, calm emergence from the dark is super unsettling. The entity didn't have to go through all that to scare her, but props to him for earning a few extra style points. You know, part of me kinda hates Sinister. Don't get me wrong, it's a good movie and all that. Studies have found that it may even be the scariest movie of all time. If you've seen the movie, you probably understand why. Not because it's super disturbing or graphic, but because nearly every jump scare is 3 trillion decibels loud. Yeah, no wonder my heart rate spikes watching this. Every jump scare feels like you just got flashbanged. And this movie has some real cheap ones, from the ghost girl popping into frame, and especially that dumb little pop-up the Bagul does at the very end. But I gotta pay respect where respect is due. There is one scene here that's a genuinely good scare. Ethan Hawke's character finds a fun little collection of family snuff films in his new home and decides to watch them because he's a sick little freak. He finds one of a family being drowned, being burned to death in a car, and an inconspicuous video of someone doing a little yard work. Gee, how thoughtful of the camera person. Alright, you got me with that one. This is actually pretty solid because it feels kinda unassuming because you see the family on the tape all happy and not ground up together at the beginning. And the tape gives very little setup, unlike the others we see. That super obnoxious jump scare noise does piss me off, but I'll let it slide just because the scare was at least decently constructed. Okay, this is a bit of a funny one, but it genuinely got me when I first saw it. The wailing involves an outbreak in a Korean village where people slowly start to turn into zombies. Sounds pretty standard, but trust me, this movie is 100% worth the watch. Anyway, there's a scene with 2 police officers in their station at night doing exactly what you shouldn't do at a time like this, talking about scary shit. And after some casual talk over xenophobia and taking mushrooms as a kid, the power goes out. And when one of the officers tries to get the power working, the other one spots something in the dark. I love this one because it's not often a jump scare is preceded by someone seeing the scary thing and commenting on it before you do. Like, the movie is directly telling us something scary is there, so you almost kind of think when we get a good look, it might be gone, only to surprise us not long after when our guard is down. But nope, that lady is just right there, and the thunderclap that pairs with her appearance is just classic icing on the cake. This film is just a nice reminder that it can be funny while still being genuinely scary. Don't Look Now is one of those horror films that many probably want to put big, fat quotation marks around the word horror. This movie was doing horror grief metaphors before the likes of The Babadook and Hereditary. The slow descent into self-destruction after being enveloped by a sadness Donald Sutherland's John refuses to come to terms with is the horror, though most of the film isn't very conventional in how it illustrates this. But the ending gives perhaps the film's biggest shock, one that manages to be quite startling. So for most of the film, John is chasing the image of what appears to be a child in a red raincoat, very similar to the one his daughter drowned in, which is the catalyst for his marriage falling apart and his mental decline. He sees this person multiple times throughout the film before finally catching up to them in an abandoned building. But this is not his sweet, dead daughter, but a dwarf woman who is responsible for a multitude of killings in the city.
Wait.
Saying that out loud, it all sounds a bit random, but I promise it makes context in the realm of the movie. And when he realizes everything he hoped for was wrong, his life is taken in jarring, cataclysmic fashion. We're then treated to a startling flash of imagery and scenes paired alongside loud church bells, bringing the themes of premonition and foreshadowing full circle. It's one of the very few scenes of its kind in the film, which only helps to heighten the frighteningness of the whole thing. And those are just a few of my favorites, but I'm curious to know what movie scenes frighten you the most. Let me know down in the comments, and if you enjoyed the video, I would love it if you would subscribe and leave a like. Be sure to tune back in later for some more movie reviews and movie-themed cocktails. Until then, happy Halloween.